Hello and welcome to Tell Between Tales. Today we are going over day 2 of Wind and Truth because even though we talked a lot about day 1, we still have a lot to go over and there's a lot to discuss in day 2. I feel like even though we're still in the setup chapters, there is a lot to talk about. Whereas last time I kind of went by plot points, this one is more, I feel like I have a lot more discussion in this one. So let's dig in. So day 2 begins with Wit and Jasnah, and I feel like a lot of people are asking questions. Oh, what's your opinion on Wit and Jasnah? And it kind of gets glossed over. People don't really have a whole lot to say, but I find that I have some stuff to say about Wit and Jasnah and their relationship. And so maybe tell your friends if you want to talk about Wit's relationship with Jasnah, this is the place to come. Let's all talk about this for a sec. So I really didn't mind this pairing at all. It made a lot of sense to me because Jasnah is obviously someone who is very smart and she craves that intellectual connection, and Wit, being this ancient being, he has a lot of knowledge and he is very smart, even though he might be an buffoon and sometimes maybe even an idiot. He is very smart in the way that he influences all of these different worlds and the things that he is working towards, and he's very good at what he does. And so that's obviously why Jasnah is drawn to him, because he is a being of vast knowledge and intelligence. And I think that Wit is drawn to Jasnah because she is more than an ordinary, I mean, she's an ordinary human, but she's an exceptional human. She is also very smart, very sharp, very much on her toes. You know, her intellectual level is very keen, and she's also a very ambitious woman. And I think these are things that he is drawn to as well, that kind of elevates her out of the other masses of humanity and people that he's interacted with. However, he still sees her as mortal, and he will always see her that way. He will always see himself as higher or better or more than she is, because he is an immortal being that has been around for forever. And this really is then at the core of why their relationship doesn't work out, because what Jasnah really, really wants is that intellectual pairing. She wants Wit to open up to her and let her into his intellectual space and confide in her and tell her all the secrets of the Cosmere, and she wants to get involved in all of that. That's what she's craving, that intellectual conversation and intimacy of sharing ideas between two people. And because he views her as just a mortal and a human and it's kind of not worthy of that, so he never elevates her up to his level, and because of that, you know, the relationship doesn't work out. Actually, I was surprised that Sanderson wrote this in, and this is something that is so prevalent in today's society. I didn't even think about it. It didn't even cross my mind until I was actually writing this review, thinking about Jasnah and Wit, because Sanderson, coming from his LDS background, and if you look at all of his other books up till this point, he really doesn't have any sexual relationships that he has written that are outside of marriage. Let me know in the comments down below if you know of one that he actually really talks about, where their relationship is an extramarital relationship. And usually, you know, he sticks to those more conservative values, and this was the first extramarital relationship that I can really recall. And now I haven't read The Year of Sanderson right here, so I don't know what's in those ones yet, or if he kind of deviates from that in those ones as well. And while, I mean, he's had characters that have sexual relationships before, of course, they've always been within the bonds of marriage. So I thought that was interesting and definitely worthy of note, because it is a further departure from his conservative values that we have been seeing him go in this direction, especially in this book, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. And now I want to talk about the shower scene, because this is the contrast. The shower scene gets a lot of flack. I don't know why the shower scene gets so much flack. I'm like, guys, what's wrong with the shower scene? I liked the shower scene. Maybe I'm the only one who liked the shower scene. I liked having this intimate moment with Adolin and Shallan. I think they deserved it. They've been through so much. And I loved getting to experience the closeness and the love that Adolin and Shallan have for each other, especially as a direct contrast to Jasnah and Wit, which their relationship seems to be much more physical, and then it doesn't work out, whereas these two have built their relationship on something different than that. And they have such a deep emotional connection, such a strong respect, and so much trust for each other that I just love their relationship. And I love seeing them together and just reveling in that closeness. I think that this relationship does a really great job of showing a loving marital relationship that is still intimate and full of passion. I feel like in our society today, we have this whole idea of like, oh, sex inside marriage is stale, and the only thing people want to read or watch on TV are two people hooking up and having relationships with each other and go like drama, right? Just so much drama. So I'm standing up for the shower scene. So I'm really happy that these two made it through the end of this book, even though they're separated in Shadesmar. I'm really happy that they're both alive. I was really rooting for them. So the rest of the chapter with, the setup is fine. I don't really want to talk a whole lot about the setup. I mean, it'd just be really recapping what happened. They're just discussing how they're going to handle this three-pronged attack. We know that we're going to be following Adolin as he goes to Azir. We know we're going to be fighting on the Shattered Plains, and we know we're going to be following Jasnah as she goes to Thaylen City, and this is going to be like the holdout, right? The setup for the rest of the book. We gotta make it until day 10, until the competition. Now the Stormfather gets really interesting here because while Dalinar and the Stormfather have had their differences, the Stormfather has never acted this aggressive and this defensive. Like, something is up with the Stormfather. He's like, oh, you're ruining everything. I have a plan. But at the same time, he's not willing to share the plan. He's not willing to help Dalinar figure out how to defeat Odium. Dalinar's like, I don't know how to do this. I don't have the power to do this. I don't have the ability. I'm not a strong enough bondsmith. I don't know what I'm doing. And the Stormfather is not helpful at all. Instead of maybe brainstorming ideas, he's like, oh, I don't know, but this is bad and you're bad and you can't go down this direction and shame on you. You're ruining everything. And so he's totally on the defensive and being super unhelpful. I wish he had been a little bit more helpful and being like, I don't agree with this. Let's pursue these avenues of how to defeat Odium. I really, really loved Shallan in this day. I mean, can we give some props to Shallan? I know that some people like to hate on Shallan, but man, her infiltrating the Ghostbloods lair in this day was nuts. I mean, she really comes into her own and showcases how much growth she has gone through and how good she really is at infiltration, her spy skills. She, she has to talk up her confidence, but she exudes confidence. She problem solves while she's infiltrating the Ghostbloods. She reveals Shajah Anat has been eavesdropping. She gets important information about who the Ghostblood spies are and learns more about the Sion and where to find her. And she learns about what their plans are. They want to go get Ba'ato Mishram. She totally goes in and breaks things up. And then she's discovered, and instead of fleeing, she's like, no, we're past that. I am capable. And she goes in there fighting and she does great. And then she takes a crossbow bolt to the chest. And then she doesn't die because she can't suck in her Stormlight because she doesn't want to implode. And so she can control that urge because she's, advanced enough and has enough experience with the surges that she prevents herself from drawing in Stormlight. I mean, can you imagine the pain? And then she has to wait for them to pull it out before she can heal herself. Holy cow. Shallan is just a boss in this chapter. She is amazing. I liked seeing her team and how they've developed and how they've grown a close relationship and how well they worked together. And that idea of second chances and refinding purpose in your life that has been cultivated with her team. I also really did appreciate the insert that we had with Navani talking to the sibling, where Navani is talking about her new ideas to upgrade the modern Fabrials to be something that is better for the Spren, because she realizes that she has done something that maybe is not entirely correct by imprisoning the Spren, and maybe if we can make it a home for them, something they are attracted to, somewhere that they want to stay, maybe that would be a better way of living. And how that plays off to, she's willing to compromise, to progress, to change her ideas. And then in return, the sibling, like Navani and the sibling are on two opposite ends of the spectrum. Like the sibling is like, you cannot enslave Spren and you have to stop making Fabrials. And Navani is like, well, Spren aren't really, they don't really have a lot of essence and we need these Fabrials. It's all very scientific. And Navani is the first to make steps. It says, see, I'm trying. Just, can you see that I'm trying? I'm trying to find a better way. Please come and see that I'm working, I'm listening to you. And because Navani takes that first step forward, the sibling is able to say, you know what, you're right, let's see if maybe this is a better way. And so instead of it's a great example of two opposing ideas, people who are on two opposite ends of the spectrum, both realizing that maybe their viewpoints are a little extreme and changing and coming to the middle. I mean, the chapter's called Compromise, and finding a better way that works for everybody. I thought that was really nice. There's not a whole lot to say about Kaladin and Seth at this point. I mean, they're starting off on pretty rocky ground. Seth doesn't want help, and Kaladin doesn't really want to help Seth. So I think that this journey really does test Kaladin's third oath, which is, I will help even those whom I hate as long as it is right. And this whole journey is about, he starts off, he doesn't like Szeth, and he's gonna help him anyway. And we just have to mention the stew. It was great that Kaladin's like, this stew is awful. And then Szeth is like, if you made this again, I would eat it. And it's a good notation. It's a good note about comparing yourself. And what are you comparing yourself to? Like if you're comparing yourself to the best of the best, which is like Rock's stew, then yeah, you're going to fall short. But if you're comparing yourself to like the bare minimum, like, hey, this is better than basic rations. And so I really enjoyed that. Like, be careful of who and what you're comparing yourself against. We also begin Seth's flashbacks in this day. Was anybody else surprised to find out that he was like a farmer boy who all he wanted to do was like dance and be with his sheep? I'm used to so many stories about like the farmer boy dreaming of adventure, right? That's how all these classic fantasy stories start, is this nobody who is dreaming of adventure, wants to get off of, the farm and out of the mundane and launches off and becomes the hero. But Szeth was the complete opposite of that. So I love that turn on the trope of the farm boy trope, and how Szeth was happy with his life. That's where he wanted to stay. I appreciate the deeper expansion of Shinovar that we get and the more information that we get about this country through Szeth's flashbacks, and we understand them a bit more. And we get to see how something seemingly so small can so dramatically change a person's life forever. I mean, if Szeth hadn't found that rock, he probably would have died. I mean, he would have died that day if he had still gone back. And the finding of a rock just changed his whole life and the possible outcomes of situations. I didn't really care for Lift. I liked Edge Dancer. Lift has never been my favorite character. And I don't like Lift in this book all the way up until she rescues Vasher and her chicken. That's when I'm finally like, okay, I'm finally starting to like Lift, because I'm like, she's gotten to be such a stale character, like, because she doesn't want to change. And so she's always griping about, I don't want to change and I'm going to be a little kid forever. And maybe I'm just too adult now and I don't like reading about whiny little kids. Maybe it's because I have 5 whiny kids. I don't want to be reading about whiny kids. And so she's been really getting on my nerves. And in this early part of the book, she really gets on my nerves. And with her, the way that she's swearing, the way that she's influencing Gav and convinces him to go sneak into she doesn't convince him to sneak into the ducks. She plants the seed in his mind about being disobedient, right? It's like, oh, well, there's some things that you need to pay attention to and some things you don't. And like, he really takes that to heart and gets sucked into the spiritual realm for it. I'm like, oh, Lift, you're so immature. Like, grow up, which I guess is the whole point, that she doesn't want to grow up. And I'm so thankful she finally gets over that, because she was really, really starting to annoy me in this. And that takes us to chapter 30. So yeah, chapter 30. I was pretty dumbfounded when I read chapter 30. I was shocked and I was not prepared. I have a whole video on this topic. You should go check it out. I was not prepared for Rlain and Renarin to be declared gay. I don't appreciate being forced to read a gay love story. Like, I want to know what I'm signing up for in advance. And the Stormlight Archives in no way is an LGBTQ story, like, ever. And so being forced to read this LGBTQ love story that the book just keeps cycling back to, I didn't appreciate that. It would be like the akin to Sanderson making me read an explicit sexual scene. I wouldn't appreciate that either, because these are not my preferences. This is not what I search for in my fantasy books. And every time in the book that we have a perspective from Rlain or Renarin, they're thinking about this. Like, their whole chapter, even if they're not actively progressing their relationship, they're thinking about this and the other person, and oh, he's so cute, and oh, I'm finding myself more and more attracted to him. And I'm like, where did this come from? Like, and it's super rushed and it's super fast. And then Sanderson tries to like backpedal and be like, oh, well, he's always been the one to reach out more, and he's always been the one to understand me more. And I'm like, no, he wasn't. Like, this wasn't in the other books. You just made that up. And so the whole thing didn't work for me. The backpedaling, the trying to build backstory that wasn't in the other books, the relationship progressing. I thought these two did not belong together. I didn't like the interspecial relationship. Like, what the heck was that? I don't want to read about a relationship between two different species. Like, this is really weird. And I didn't like it when it showed up later in the book either. Like, with the last time, one of the visions, when they're trying to make peace, they're finally figuring out like how Ba'ato Mishram was captured, and these two, there's a human and a singer. I don't care if they are heterosexual or homosexual. I don't want to read it. Like, this is weird. Like, we're two entirely different species, and like, yeah, they're kind of humanoid, but it's weird. Like, why is it that the only way these two species can make peace with each other is because they're like in love with each other? That's not a requirement. When is that a requirement for two peoples bridging these cultural gaps? Like, it's just, no thank you. So, ending on a positive note, or at least a different note, not that note, entering the spiritual realm happened a lot faster than I thought. And then everybody getting sucked into it. You knew something was going to go down. I didn't expect Mraize to blow up the whole perpendicularity. And then that's another kind of odd thing, is that there were two Windrunners, and both of them left when they're like, oh, we have the guards and you better go get them quick. Like, well, why didn't one stay behind and one go get the guards? There's two of you, and you have to protect the king and Navani, the king and the queen, you have to protect them just as well. I mean, the battle was pretty much won, but they got to know that if they hightail it out of there, that's going to leave a significant disadvantage to the people that are left. I mean, they're smart. They got to know that they know it's a trap. And so both of the Windrunners leave, which I thought was a little bit unrealistic. Like, one should stay and one should leave. But they both left, so then that is that. And then, of course, Gav getting sucked into the spiritual realm. I figured that Sanderson had plans for him. And, I wonder, too, if it's a way for him just to age up Gav for the second arc. Because I was thinking maybe he would be like the hero of the second arc was kind of my idea. But then having him be plucked away by Odium and having him appear as Odium's champion, like, well, was he sucked into the spiritual realm for that? Like, it just seems so unfulfilling, because then he was stolen by Odium and trained for 20 years, and then Odium didn't even let him really fight Dalinar. I mean, he actually froze Gav and was like, okay, go kill Gav and prove my point. And so it was unfulfilling, I guess. I'm like, wait, what's going on? This is just, it's really weird. So I'm wondering if maybe the whole thing is just a setup for Era 2. I guess you'll just have to wait to figure out if that's true or not. And so that leads us to the interludes. I don't really have much to say about these interludes. They're fine. They're good. I mean, Taravangian's exploring his dual nature. I had really hoped that what he had said about letting like the emotional side and the intellectual side of his nature rule for a period of time would maybe yield some results as far as, you know, his emotional side saying, you know, this is not something we should be doing. But then, of course, he just flips it around and finds justification for his actions no matter what. We don't really know much about El, and I feel like now that the book is over, I still really don't know much about El. Like, we get like one chapter from him at the end of Rhythm of War, and you know, we get a little bit more information about him, about mostly how he's like, you don't want to mess with him. And, oh, he has no titles. I'm like, okay. I don't really know anything about him. Maybe he's another Era 2 setup. So those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Go ahead and engage with the discussion. I would love to hear what you thought about day 2 and my thoughts about day 2 and your thoughts about day 2. So drop me a comment down below and we will see you next time in day 3. Bye. Have a great day.